Boom, hello and welcome to the Executive Protection Lifestyle Podcast, Season 3. With your host, Byron Rodgers. This podcast is dedicated to the executive protection practitioner, the private security professional. In this podcast, we're going to talk about the mental, emotional, psychological, physiological fitness that goes into being an efficient and effective executive protection agent. Whether you're in law enforcement, whether you're a mom that's looking at how to protect her children, or a father that's focused on how to protect his family, I believe this podcast has something for all of you. We might even get into some tales from the crypts of true Hollywood stories from time to time. I'm doing this podcast because I feel the reality of this job is simple. If you really want to be good at executive protection, it's more than just a job. It really is a lifestyle. And those of you who've been in the game for any serious amount of time, you already know what I'm saying is true. So if that sounds interesting to you, enjoy the show. Out. Boom! What's going on, you guys? Byron Rodgers here with another amazing episode of Executive Protection Lifestyle Podcast. I'll probably air this on the Protector Podcast because there's going to be so much good information about a topic that I believe is so undervalued, about things that I think that we don't focus on enough. I've got an honored expert here with me today, Mr. Steve Summerville of Stay Safe Instructional Programs. How are you today, sir?
Doing great, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. It's an honor to be able to have this conversation with you.
Thank you. The honor is shared by me. I followed you, know about your background, the virtues that you display, and absolute pleasure to be here with you today. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's an honor. And I Steve's one of those people that you listen to, or at least that I listen to, and you realize he's one of those guys you want on your team, and you realize he's really smart. He's smarter than me, when it comes to these things. So
don't know about that, but thank you.
I listen, man, when you speak. One of the slogans that I saw of your brand, Stay Safe Instructional Programs, that I really liked was that one may work in peace. Right. And I think it's so powerful, and I'll ask you to define it, for you in a moment here. But for me, as a business owner in executive protection, as a guy that has extensions of my business and brand DNA out there, that at any given moment, on any given day, could be confronted with decisions that could greatly change the trajectory of my life and my business and my clients' lives, that one may work in peace slogan is huge as we aim to mitigate risks for ourselves and our clients and our employees. But what does that mean to you? Why did you choose those words?
Thank you. A great question. Never been asked that before either. It's interesting when you look at this concept of peace of mind, an ability to perform your skills, to work, to be able to provide employment for others, depending whether you're an employee, whether a business owner or client, to be assured and to be able to be comfortable with the paradigm that you work within, and work within a curriculum, and work within a space that we will mitigate and prevent litigation, negative commentary, criticism, skepticism, and criminal charges, liability charges. So peace of mind is basically that you're doing the right thing. I have a triage considerations. Whenever I look at a program or ever provide training, it's got to be legal, got to be ethical, it's got to be moral. And if you're able to meet that triage of considerations, generally speaking, you are going to be seamless with your approach of your practices and the means of the way you apply your trade. And if there's anything that you could be criticized or held accountable to with respect to breaching ethics or morals or legalities, that, sir, is where we start to unfurl a huge amount of problems and challenges that might take us to extremes that we've never considered.
Yeah. And that's where the living the dream becomes living the nightmare real quick.
My gosh. You've gone from a pleasant environment to a horror film.
Right.
And you're the scope of that horror film. And now you are facing scrutiny, and we've seen it through North America wide. And whatever you believe in, I pray that you don't have to go there.
Yeah.
Life can turn in a blink. Mm-hmm. And we suddenly then start to look at the sources. And we just were saying before, we had a brief chat, love the chat we had before we went live here. And we were at a charitable golf tournament yesterday for a healthcare federation. And got a phone call from a criminal lawyer who is defending security in an incident we had happen here in Toronto last year where 2 security guards were charged criminally with causing death with a patient, mental health patient. And this went viral. This is major news item issues. And the challenging moments here is you had 2 licensed security guards, professional security guards, attempting to restrain a patient, hold them down. And the person succumbed during that time. So after about 3 weeks of investigation, they were charged by the Toronto Police Service, criminally charged. Then they were dismissed. They were fired by their employer. And now they've determined they're left to their own devices.
Wow.
And you must acquire your own criminal counsel. And, north and south of the border, if you start to look at the cost factor associated to that, it could wipe out life earnings and certainly going to wipe out things that you're looking to earn over the next decade.
Wow.
And during that period of time, you are now vulnerable and you're exposed to curriculum and to training and to what's reasonable, what's not. And if you ever stopped and thought that your actions might be deemed to be criminal in nature, and that changes the entire mix in terms as to expectations, reasonable expectations, what did you do? What did you do? And just the thought of a period of, incarceration, I don't think it's acceptable for anyone in our business, especially if you think you've done something wrong.
Right.
And how does that hit the business model?
Mm-hmm.
When one of your agents and one of your guards and one of your people are criminally charged, that could put you right out of the industry, because a lot of people don't wish to marry themselves up with issues, especially there's allegations of racism, insensitivity, cultural clashes, and criminal intent, mens rea, Latin for criminal intent. So those are things we need to avoid. So the opposition to that is we need to create a curriculum and a mindset, that warrior mindset. I call it like a bulletproof mind, where we need to be righteous in the sense of doing the right thing, but not for the wrong reason.
Absolutely. And that's beautiful. That's where we want to be. That's where we want to exist, our companies to exist, our employees to exist. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, ladies and gentlemen, just to give you guys some awareness on our trajectory here. Steve Summerville is one of the instructors for the master's class, the Executive Protection Specialist master's class we're going to be rolling out, where he talks about this topic. He's an expert witness, and he goes in depth on how to mitigate these types of risks within your employees and within your company and different things like that, higher level concerns that we deal with on the ground and also, but as security managers and company owners. And also I should mention that Steve Summerville is coming to us from our EPL Canada chapter. So for those of you who don't know, we are branching out as a brand. You're going to see EPL Canada. You'll see another satellite chapter and all around the world, maybe in Mexico popping up next. We'll see. But these different cadres that we're elevating are people that you need to pay attention to, because they have a lot of value to give this industry. And we're going to be bringing that to you guys through the Executive Protection Lifestyle brand here over the course of, the next year and into the future. So stand by for that. It's an honor. Exciting. Yeah, it's an honor to join forces with all of you. So just briefly, would you mind just unearthing your extensive background for everyone real quick for me, Mr. Summerville, because this man has done some things and I don't want to leave any of them out.
Well, thank you, sir. Real briefly. And this is to talk about just where I come from. I was a serving member of the Toronto Police Service for 24 years, just under a quarter of a century. I finished with rank they call Staff Sergeant. And I finished my career at the Ontario Police College. That is the second largest police training facility in the world. The first one is the largest, the FBI Academy at Quantico. And my role was to train the defensive tactics, use of force, firearms, curriculum, all your intermediate weapons to serving police officers in our province of Ontario. And I had come from the Toronto Police Service, that is Canada's largest municipal police service. Probably around 8,500 members, police officers that serve the community. And my role was to provide training, to be able to articulate that training and work into content and curriculum. I also would be able to provide training to various platforms of training considerations throughout the country under the direction of my chief of police or police services board. And in my career, I got into the realm of expert testimony, because at times you need to explain to a judge or jury and or the community as to why people are trained, how people are trained, what are the reasonable expectations associated to it, and with specific actions that are being reviewed, did that make sense? Was the actions of your agent or guard, police officer, were they consistent with your training and reasonable, necessary in the context of their application? And that did not end when I left policing. I left policing in 2001. I went to a major broadcaster in Canada in security. That would be the equivalent of MTV. And back at that time, it was called Much Music in Canada. And I was able to, literally on a Friday, I gave up policing. And on the Saturday, we started with a Madonna tour out west in Vancouver. So we went from literally a police uniform to a rock and roll environment within 24 hours. What a paradigm shift. And I went from an environment where chasing people away, maybe not literally, inviting them in to be a part of that concert experience. So I did that for about 6 years. And then around 2006, I was created a training program. I've gone out private for the last 15 years, actually. But what I've been able to do, Byron, is I've testified against this throughout the country. I've actually now testified in 4 provinces and 1 territory in this country as an expert in use of force in education associated to it. And I want to, just to show the viewer, I'm just not a hired gun, perhaps a poor choice of words, but I have testified for and against police action. I'm non-partial, I'm non-partisan. I tell the truth under oath. And sometimes the truth can be painful, but as you know, I just got back a few days ago from Edmonton, Alberta. We'll look at a video segment in a moment, share with your viewers. But yeah, I've testified for and against, including security with especially the healthcare world. So I'm not a hired gun. I'm one that's telling the truth under oath. You can count on that. And what we review is your policies and your procedures, the curriculum that you provided, and the content and context of application to see if that meets that litmus test. So virtually for the last 44 years, that's a snapshot of what I do.
Outstanding, man. No, it's an honor to share these conversations with someone who has so much experience at those levels, you know. And then, yeah, viewers, we're gonna go ahead and dig into some real world events that actually can help us understand where people go wrong, you know, and where people have gone right, and kind of look at some real world application on these things that we're talking about in terms of mitigating these types of risks that you may have to answer for in the courtroom. So yeah,
that's an interesting thing, you know, and I'm not being disingenuous at all when I say this, but at times when there's criticism, that's done often with an agenda, that other people have a specific desire to perhaps deify what you do, to characterize you as a thug, to show that you had no empathy, no sympathy, and that your actions were criminal or negligent in context. And certainly in the executive protection lifestyle, in that component, you're dealing with clients' needs. You're dealing with working often with law enforcement. You're providing a level of protection that at times could be challenging. And the moment you might have to go active, put your hands on people, as exciting as that might be, invigorating it might be, we need to look at the potential consequence of our actions. And we've certainly seen, you know, I look at CNN, I see the newsworthy items. I will look at Fox Network as well to see that balance. But we need to take a look at what causes anger and frustration in the community, especially when your actions are deemed to be inappropriate or racist in nature. And what other options, reasonable options, which you've had, and the extremity of your actions were excessive and criminal in nature. And that begs to shut you down. And when you are now exposed to incarceration, that changes the culture. The culture, we cannot be dismissive of public scrutiny and public input, especially dealing with people that are looking at their legal rights to demonstrate and to gather, you know, and that is consistent north and south of the border, Canada, United States. We're aware of that. And when people rise to voice their opinions, especially over issues like pandemic and masking and mandatory vaccination or not, these are issues that bring people forward. And it's just not that the people you're dealing with have these undesirable desires. There is passion, there's intellect, there's anger that you have to deal with, that emotional context. Right. So when I'm dealing with an individual, man or woman, that's emotional or upset, Have you factored in big questions? And here's one common question, Byron. Often I see police officers or agents asked is, when you dealt with my client, did you consider the fact that they were afraid? You stated that they were exhibiting resistance, causing you to lay force. So did you stop and think for one moment that they were afraid of you? And we're dealing with a fearful human being. What level of resistance, if any, would you anticipate? So now you're starting to be put on the spot with the types of response mechanisms that you might encourage. Here's the thing. In our world, north and south of the border, did you consider de-escalation? Do you know what it is? How did you ask a person? And he can tell you. Did you seek voluntary compliance? And a lot of people are put on the spot, sir, because they don't even know what those words mean.
Oh, man, that's tragic.
And you need to give a person an out, a chance for an out. And contextually, what do you say? And I'm not walking up into a person's face and space and saying, you're going to do this or else.
Right.
Or else I'm going to hurt you, or I'm going to apply force on you. You need to create a reasonable option for the person to comply. You need to say things to them like, I'm not going to hurt you. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you to consider, will you do that? And what if the person you're dealing with exhibits signs, social and mental health? We call the EDPs, or emotionally disturbed persons, or they're on substance abuse, or they're having issues associated to medication, prescribed or otherwise, it's gone awry. And you may not know that, but if you're dealing with a person who's mentally ill, in executive protection, and just take a look at my friends here at Sentinel Security, they're dealing with the Alive Movie Festival, Toronto International Film Festival coming up. You get a lot of unique personalities out there that want to get close to the talent.
All over the board.
Polite, being professional. And want to touch the talent. And it doesn't mean they're criminal in nature, but you've got to take reasonable steps to prevent that human interaction.
Right.
And what if our scope of involvement maybe wasn't consistent with what is expected of the community? The person wasn't offering resistance to you, and you hurt them.
Right.
So does your training program for your specific company offer de-escalation program? Does it offer empathy? Does it offer a sympathetic response to how we deal with people? Or is it just simply administration of force? That is questions that I need to ask you to consider in terms of how we apply our trade.
Wow. Outstanding.
Is that fair?
That's absolutely fair, and that's the reality based on the culture that we all live in now. That's the reality that we have to, I talk about selling security, what you're doing right now, is it YouTube friendly? Are you selling security? Are you doing something that you're going to be able to justify if they're assume, like in Iraq, everything we did, assume the enemy's watching you. Is it prudent to sit down and look tired right now? Is it prudent to, assume the enemy's watching you? And I always tell my guys, assume there's a camera on you at all times. And you've got to realize that every decision you make, you've got to be selling security, not anything else, not tough guy stuff or whatever else is in your mind. And so this is another reason why I think we don't focus as an industry on these skills enough. We talk about the hard skills and the soft skills. This is a soft skill component that's one of the most important. Even in combat, in a war zone, I'm in Iraq, and when you were telling me about training those guys, those troops, I was like, it's so important, because the first thing I needed when I was on the ground in Iraq and I made contact with people was I needed to be able to de-escalate situations, and I needed to help them feel safe. I needed to be able to communicate that to them as I started coming in contact. Please. Yes, sir.
How did you do that?
Honestly,
not put you in the spot, of course. But
yeah.
What were you thinking before you said something?
Right. I needed to establish with them that I didn't need to become aggressive, that we could navigate this, what we need to do, and it doesn't need to become aggressive. And honestly, it was a lot of eye contact, and it was a lot of me being grounded and helping them see that no matter what they do, as long as I'm maintaining a safe position, that I wasn't getting sucked into the chaos that they were feeling inside. I hope that's a good way of explaining it.
And you've got the heartbeat of that material. You've got that. That's a secret. That's a secret sauce to the special meal that, we can all taste and respond to. I'm going to take you to 1993.
Yes, sir.
An American, Dr. George Thompson, released a book called Verbal Judo. Have you read it or heard about it?
Yes, sir. I've read it.
North and South of Border. I would invite any of our viewers to check out that book, Verbal Judo, The Art of Rhetoric.
Right.
And to use speech and communications to initiate and solicit that voluntary compliance without having to lay the hands. And Mr. Thompson was a former police officer and a former school teacher. And you look at his stories and that, he's a hardcore guy. He's not you wouldn't see this guy working at Walmart. He wouldn't do well at customer service.
Right.
But he learned through error, trial and tribulation, is that the most powerful weapon we have, this destructive weapon we have, is the mouth.
Absolutely.
And things that come out, and things that you say, and I usually ask people in my classrooms, I usually start out, I hook them. I usually say, can anybody here show me, please, just raise your hands who either at work or home has said something to calm down a human being. A lot of hands go up. So I say, okay, well, following up on that question, who here, by saying something, is thoroughly pissed off another human being? And then I say, by the way, here's the aha moment, and who's good at it? Who's good at it?
Who's good at it?
Who's ever been criticized? Oh, I do. And who's ever been criticized of being sarcastic? Byron, have you ever been criticized of being sarcastic?
I can be so sarcastic.
Have you ever said something that you wish you could take back? Have you ever been offended by what a person said to you? Have you ever been offended what people have said to you? Have you ever been offended by something you've said to another person? Think about that one for a minute.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard anything come out of your mouth thinking, whoa, that's not good?
Yeah.
Ooh, it was heard.
And then it's, what do you allow that offense to do inside of you? What's your default response package for that? And that, I think that emotional intelligence is where you really start to separate classes of people that survive, that thrive in these types of situations, and that fail, because
but now when you have position of authority,
oh gosh,
and you are in a position to determine the relevance of laying your hands, I call it laying the hands. I'm going to write a book someday. It's going to be called Laying the Hands. Yeah. And if you think about it for one moment, when the tipping point occurs, when you just suddenly reach out and touch a human being, that can be the hot point, the trigger point, the tipping point of an altercation. Because how many times have you ever touched a person professionally? I should register that professionally, and had a person say, "Don't touch me. Take your hands off me. Get out of my face. Get out of my space."
This is a reflexive response. Who do
you allow to get close to you in your life?
Intimate people. Only
the intimate zone is the same zone that we use for fighting.
Right.
In adversity and aggression. That throws that tilts a lot of people's thoughts.
It's an intimate thing.
It is. And when you're escorting a client or escorting, a person away from a client, I should say, or you're laying the hands, you get that resistance, you get that flash. Don't you touch me and take your hands on me. Ding, 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 the fight's on.
Oh, yeah.
And the person turns to you later and says, I did nothing wrong. Who was the first person that struck who? And that's when the whole process can start to unravel.
Absolutely. Outstanding. Good stuff. So let's dig into some of these videos. Let's get into some real world.
I'm going to take you to Edmonton, Alberta, out west.
Yes, sir.
And I'm going to not put you, I might put you on the spot with respect. I'm going to ask you after you see it to tell me what you think. Is that okay?
All right. Absolutely.
Here's the video clip that was shown. It's filmed by a national broadcaster, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, acquired from a cell phone.
Wow.
Of a concerned citizen that changed the life and the career path of a police officer in Edmonton. So let's just run this, please, if you can. And I'm going to ask you what you think, sir.
Outstanding. Yeah, it's executive protection lifestyle. So I think my people are used to me being a student in front of them. That's what this whole brand is supposed to be.
Sure. And of course, we'll share a beer when we meet in Miami. So
yes, sir.
Look.
Oh, buddy.
Now, can I run that one more time? It's a 26-second video.
Yes, sir. All right. Putting the cuffs on him.
That's the video clip. So what I'm going to ask you, well, first of all, you can ask me anything, but what do you think? What's your gut tell you, sir?
My gut says this is a hard one to sell, man. The suspect or the perpetrator, the person that we are detaining, is on the floor. He looks like he's either already subdued or he's already submitted. He's submitting to the officer who has already made physical contact with him. And for that second officer to walk up and drop his knee on his head like that, that is a possibly lethal blow that, from this angle at least, and with the snapshot of information that I have access to because of this clip, didn't look warranted. I couldn't really make out the hands. Maybe he was doing something with his hands that I couldn't see. Maybe there's more information. It looked like then they put the cuffs on him and took something off this person. Maybe he was reaching for a gun. I don't know. But if I just would say, in terms of selling security and selling professional interaction with, with those who were sworn to protect, this is going to be a tough one because it looks like it was an unwarranted drop of the knee to this guy's head or face region. And hopefully that's not what it was, because I want the protectors to come out on top, and I want people
that would be your professional opinion.
That would be the best I can come up with off of this 30-second clip at a distance.
And thank you for that. I appreciate that, honest. And that is majority. I show this usually to my conscious in my life. My wife, she looked at, oh my gosh, and brought her hands up to her mouth, and she was offended, a little bit mortified by what she saw. So here's the thing. Sometimes when we review incidents, especially in video, I'm going to invite you to consider the following. You saw a snippet. You saw a movie trailer.
Right.
Have you ever seen a movie trailer, think, oh, looks like a good movie, seen the movie and completely disappointed?
That happened last night.
Yeah, there you go. I won't ask you the movie you saw, but maybe you'll tell me. Here's the thing. We can get duped into perhaps being prejudiced on what we see.
Right.
What I start to look at when I see a video context, I usually say to people, you'd agree that's a quick thing. You did not see the initial interaction. You saw the officer moving. His name was Partington, Constable Partington. He moved to the right and administered a knee drop.
Right.
Questions that you might want to ask at that point is why? What was the basis? What was the considerations? And maybe you need, I'm not suggesting your decision would change, but perhaps if you had more information, that might be useful for you.
Right.
You might want to understand the other officer's first interaction, because I wanted to go back to the beginning. I wanted to find what brought all these people together, where things unfolded to the point where you started the video, but I wanted to see what wasn't on the video. I was interested to see what occurred prior to the cell phone starting to be filmed. And what I determined, and what was evidential material, was that the initial officer, his name was McCarger, and that you didn't see him. You didn't see him. He was having a discussion, arguably over the perception of a stolen bicycle. You didn't see the bicycle just to the left there of the fallen man. I guess it's off your screen, but I can still see it in mine. The issue was here is during the conversation, the gentleman to him, and he was creating a bylaw offense in Edmonton, Alberta. You got to have a bell on your bike and you can't be driving on the sidewalk. Very, very minutiae, very minor, but it's a basis to talk. It's just something. This is why I was talking to you.
You're right.
But the person refused to identify himself to the officer, and that is a breach. And during that conversation, he shoved the officer and started to run. They became footers. Now, this is a heavy, heavy crime area in Edmonton. And it's a lot of weaponry. A lot of people having sharps on their clothing, sharp-edged weapons for years, sometimes firearms in your clothing. And this suddenly is all the other officers heard on the air and the radios, foot pursuit of one. And in my world, when an officer is chasing another, there's risk.
Oh, yeah.
In that moment, unconscious and incompetent, you don't know what you don't know. We need to think about risk to the officer, risk to the community. And in that moment, the dispatcher voiced out for the officer, 20, what's your location, where are you going? No response. That raises the alarm bell. Because suddenly now there's, I see my friend, I see Byron, foot pursuit, I work with Byron, I know Byron. This guy, you're not responding. And you've got a mic lapel radio and you got the car radio. And then you hear an out of huffing and puffing officer, got him, I got him. I need help to get him handcuffed. At that moment, the dispatcher voiced out any car in the area to respond. One of our officers are having a problem holding one. We need this information. So the officer that Partington you mentioned, that was the officer that you saw come in from the right side of the screen. He was the one charged with assault. And he's the only officer up to this point in time in Edmonton, Alberta, that has been suspended without pay. It's been a year and a half now, and COVID unfortunately shut down the trial for a while. So what was interesting is that people went to judgment real quickly without understanding the full side of the story and what Partington thought. And Partington just testified here Thursday of this past week, a few days ago, doing the podcast. And what he explained was, I know this officer. He's a big officer. This guy's a beast. We call him Miguel Guerrero. This is a big guy. And, he's never seen him have a physical skirmish before. And what they're concerned about is the level of resistance. And what I need to count on is if I take you down to the ground, it's because obviously we could not negotiate a form of interaction. Right. And it's north and south of the border, that grounding process. You drive a person to the ground, face down, belly down to eliminate, mitigate movement. That. Right. But what we need to understand is I got to control this person's hands. See, the mouth will offend you. The hands can hurt you.
Hands will kill you. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, they can kill you. And what happens is, especially in the context of an arrest, I need to take quick, forcible action of it. So when Partington drove up, he put it into park, and he saw that the officer, his colleague, his associate, did not have the person in a handcuffing position. One hand was up, the other hand was underneath your stomach.
Yeah, that's a problem.
That's called access to belt line, access to clothing line. Right. And I'm singing to the choir here, but you, in your world especially, about how weapons are conveyed and carried, usually in your clothing, pants, stuff like that. I must control hand access. He also saw that his partner, McCarger's hands, white knuckles were white. He was holding on. He couldn't hold. Because I was surprised because this constable is like 220 pounds. This guy's a weightlifter. He can handle it. He could not control this guy.
Wow.
So the officer believed, and he testified under oath. He testified that, Your Honor, when I approached the situation, I had no idea if my partner was hurt. I did not know what the reason or rationale was behind, but I did not want to hurt this man, but I wanted to stop movement. And we have what we call in defensive tactics and law enforcement a shoulder ground pin, where I get you down, belly down. I would apply weight to the back, the upper right portion of your back.
Yep.
He said, interesting, that was my intent. That was my desire. I wanted to deliver my knee dead center of that shoulder blade, and it worked. It worked. It was remarkable. That was the only blow delivered, the only blow. And then he was able to acquire the hand, get the hands in handcuffing position. Now, if I run that video later due to time restraints, it didn't. But you hear from the original officer, Ms. McCarver, you hear a conduct that I would not say is professional. They're swearing, bit of cursing, dropping the F-bomb. That doesn't show usually a person that's in its level of homeostasis.
Right.
The other officer did not say anything. Matter of fact, told the person he was going to raise him to his feet, double lock the handcuffs as a safety feature.
Yeah.
Right. Searched him as you'd expect. And interesting enough, after that action, Byron, there was zero injury to the person on the ground. No injury at all. Not reporting any hospitalization, no complaints or anything. Right. So the officer said, and hindsight, I wish it were a gift. The officer said, Your Honor, under oath, I accept the fact that was probably harder than I should have. Didn't know it at the time. I didn't see that at the time. And there really, I look at, I wish I had done that, but it worked. It was effective. And the question that the Crown Attorney, the prosecutor, put to him was that, well, would you done it again? Yes, I would. Because I realized that's a really meaty area. It was not the neck. It was not the head. You wouldn't do that. And circumstantially, I would never direct a knee or a hard strike to your neck, your head, your spine.
Right.
But that big meaty area of the upper back, that is desired target area in law enforcement, north and south of the border. That is humane. That's
armor.
Yeah. So now, here's the interesting thing. I should be careful how I say this, but the prosecutor here was very mindful of the fact that you didn't want to get into other options, because the officer stated, I didn't want to hurt this guy, and I didn't hurt this guy. There was no intent to hurt him. I wanted to control him. And I've learned through my training and my coach officers and training and common sense in policing that if I can apply a technique on you to stop both movement and control your hands without hurting you, that's what I'm seeking.
Yeah.
So that was the whole story that came out. And by the way, I need to add this too, sir. is there was additional peripheral evidence. Citizens saying, well, you saw the video, but the video did not capture the resistance and the struggling on the ground.
Yeah.
Of course, it wasn't captured by the video. And these were nonpartisan, not on the payroll of the police, didn't know the cops, just telling the truth. This is my patio, this is where I live, and I saw this. And that's extremely beneficial evidence. So at the end of the day, knowing that information, not to put you in the spot, my friend, but might that change your view of the officer's actions?
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely. I think my main thing, and I think the thing that I try to do with these videos is, and I think I mentioned this, I was like, it's just hard to tell. This is a hard video to sell. Like, this is clickbait, viral police fodder video,
Yeah.
And so it's easy to get sucked into that. But, when you see your guy pull something, and I thought a weapon was going to be produced at some point, because it looked like they were probably doubling up the cuffs, but they looked like maybe they were pulling something out, or you just don't know what's going on, like you don't know what's going on with your guy. You have to assume or hope, actually, I think is the way I said it. I hope there was more information that justified that action. You have to look at these guys, and you want to look at them and say, you know what? I hope that something drove that response through that police officer other than a negative base emotion.
That's the thing. If there was just a situation, you're sitting there conversing with me, and all of a sudden you throw me to the floor and apply a hard technique. No, obviously not.
Who does that?
Yeah, who would do that, right? But there's always content to context. Right. And what we need in our industry is be open-minded enough to be able to seek out all the information, all the evidence, gather that all together, and then provide a non-partisan opinion. Yeah, I'm not on the payroll. I'm telling you the truth as we see it. Right. And, I said in court, that use of force, self-defense is not pretty sometimes. No, it's really not pretty. And I don't know what caused a person to run. And there was the officer, what they call is in place. In other words, he had a legal authority to act. So the legalities weren't argued. And what was argued was the decision to administer knee drop. Mm-hmm. Well, use of force at times, you don't have the opportunity to review, and it's spontaneous. In 2005, it's a brilliant book written by Malcolm Gladwell called Blink. Yes. I don't know if you caught it. He's Canadian too, by the way. Eh?
Yeah. 2 points for you guys.
So I'm going to plug Canada there for a second. Right. I was also a contributor for New Yorker magazine. So he's well revered. He's had 6 best-selling books. But his book, Blink, talks about rapid cognition and how we make quick, rapid decisions. And his book really features in the 1999 shooting of Amadou Diallo in New York City by 4 plainclothes police officers. Wow. And how by virtue of doing certain behaviors that you might flag as risk, like you put your hands in your pocket and you blade, you turn your hips, that caused Amadou Diallo to be shot 41 times by 4 police officers. And I'm certain you know what happened with the racial riots in New York City that night. But when he was asked to identify himself, and he pulled something out of his pocket that was black, and you heard one officer say, he's got a gun. All guns came out.
It's over.
Do you know what Diallo pulled out of his pocket? You probably know this. His wallet.
His wallet in his bag. Like he's trying to identify himself.
Man.
Nightmare.
So this is where your training can also defeat you.
Right.
Because if you're negatively primed to view resistance based on some body language that might be a little tweaked the wrong way, suddenly you think you're responding to lethal force situation that is false. It's erroneous and it's false. And this was bad timing, depending on, and Gladwell speaks about that in Blink, is either as an overt sign of racism or just really bad decision. Now, the 4 white New York City police officers were acquitted, found not guilty with respect to shooting death of Diallo, and that created race riots in New York City. Bruce Springsteen, I don't know if you're a friend of the boss, recorded a song called 41 Shots in the memory of Amadou Diallo. So we had this north and south of the border. And, we had a situation, don't know, we want time to talk maybe next time. We're going to go to another province, a little west of us, Winnipeg, Manitoba. Perhaps in this case, context in a home. And let it run. It's a couple of minute video, quick, but let me run, then we'll talk. How's that? I wasn't too favorable here with police response because of empathy. I'm a big one in empathy. the power of empathy, and I don't believe that was applied. Let's take a look.
It's a brief video, about a minute in duration. And unfortunately, the video does not tell me the causation behind the officer's appearance. But clearly, you don't hear the youth being arrested. You don't hear any instructions regarding the youth. There's nothing to suggest he has to comply with the officer's request to speak him outside. And unfortunately, there is some conduct that probably caused some strife from the police officer in the area where he was responding physically to what we would describe as very really passive resistant behavior. The youth was swearing at him, and the officer physically responded what appears to be a slap.
Were the officer's actions justified?
The officer's actions, according to the video, I see nothing that would justify having warrant the officer's actions. The youth at best, police training dictate the establishment of a Coroner attempts to de-escalate most of the youth's challenges, verbal challenges, and whatnot. And nothing there in terms of police training would certainly the officer's actions reasonable and necessary, which are the requirements of the EPL Canada.
There is a second officer in the video. What do you have to say about the actions of the second officer?
Well, the second officer, the female officer, did not physically touch the youth, but I didn't see anything in the officer's actions suggest she tried to stop and intercede with the male officer's actions. You could have said stop or tried to take some step in some form to prevent the youth from being physically accosted.
Have you ever seen or heard of any other incidents like this before?
In 4 decades of policing and training, yes, I have seen similar incidents. There again, we're trying to adjudicate in a brief 60-second video. Perhaps we didn't see any initial communications that came in. I'm not certain exactly what the officer's experience was or what he saw size, but the 60-second 1-minute video doesn't describe the officer's ability to use force at that point.
One of the officers, the male officers, went on ahead and got physical, maybe a little early in the overall situation.
Yeah, let's very briefly set the stage, if I may. This was a domestic situation involving a teenager in her home. And the teenager is being disrespectful to the parents. And the parents decided to call the police to say, you got to speak to my kid. My young man here is just mouthpiece, disrespectful to mom. And I think a police officer would make a difference. So police officers were invited into the home. And he started to, the male police officer started speaking to the youth, young indigenous male, saying, "Don't speak to your mom like that." So pardon my French, but of course the young youth turn around, "Fuck you, I think you're an idiot too." And he had really vocabulary.
Yeah.
And the officer hauled off and slapped him across the face.
Oh.
Yeah. And
Kicking it up a notch.
He says, "There, you want more?" And of course the youth was quiet. Now this was being recorded by the mom on their cell phone, and she said, I asked the police to come in here to be peacekeepers, be a peace officer, not slap my kid. I could have done that,
Yeah.
I'll leave that as a parental decision.
Right.
But point being is, at what point do you commence communications? And here's the thing.
So bad. This is I'm trying to wrap my mind around the catastrophic nature.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my Lord. All right.
You strike a kid, bad day at the office. Yeah, there you go. Now I feel better. I'm going to hit you, son, until I feel better. You don't want to go there, especially when you're wearing a uniform. And the abuse factor. Now, that officer was charged and pled to assault.
Yeah.
And now the other criticism is what should the officer have done? And don't know if you caught it. We'll send you the video, of course. But what the issue was there is you need to enter a home. You need to have skin coated with Teflon at times, if you know what I mean by that. If I could say something to you, sir, that's going to change your demeanor, if I could use words that are going to impact and affect your performance, if I'm going to make you lose your temper to the point you either with an open hand or close your fist and strike me, you've really lost, not me.
Yeah, psychologically, absolutely.
Yeah, don't get me, I'm not a zealot. I fully am an advocate. Martial arts ever since I'm 5 years old, it seems. And there's times if I can talk to you, I'll talk you down. You raise your hands to me, we're going to have an altercation. I'm not going to be assaulted or allow anybody else in my safety zone to be assaulted. But I'm going to make certain that's a last ditch requirement and there's no other reasonable means to resolve the situation. You've got to be able to manage adversity. So that gets you into your education, and I believe should be an integral part of EP training is de-escalation mode. And how do you calm people? How do you keep yourself calm? And if I call you names, no doubt, sir, you've been called names professionally, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, not today. Not today. It's early in the morning out there.
Right.
You've been called names. Did you allow that to affect your moral fiber?
No. Well, and I think what you mentioned was very important. This is where you start to get into your training, and, you know, knowing who you are, I think very largely comes from your training and your education and the values that are instilled in there. You know, I know who I am because I live that lifestyle, right? This executive protection lifestyle, but I invest in being that person, and I cultivate being that person, and I earn the respect of that person on a daily basis. When I'm at work, this is like, it's like a chess game. Everything's out. It's like I'm flying in a cockpit. You know, this is me navigating something outside of me. I'm performing surgery. You know, like
you are.
These are the types of things. You are.
And you've got to maintain your integrity when you're dealing with the public, customers, clients.
Absolutely.
You know, and just not when you're being videotaped. Right. On a person's cell phone. That's not when you raise the bar in terms of performance. And, I didn't know it was being filmed. Yeah, you know, no. I'm an old guy. I remember the first time in Toronto when I was a riot team officer, crowd control. We didn't call it riots back then, but it was a riot. And remember back during the Rodney King fiasco?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man.
And when the officers were acquitted in that trial, there were riots in Miami, LA, and Toronto.
Oh really? Huge. Toronto got down for him too.
For 3 nights, for the first time, we actually placed our public order. It was only our crowd control team was only prepared for a G7 summit. Okay. But suddenly now it was the Avenue. We're out all the time. They're out all the time. But yeah, suddenly now we realized we got some intel. This was going to go pretty strong. And what we see in CNN, this is going to, and yes, sure enough, we started with the looting, we started with the rioting in Toronto. For 3 full nights, we were out deployed, trying to talk to people to go home. This is not working. Wow. And yeah, we had to go shoulder to shoulder and clear thousands and thousands of people who were angry, who were emotional, who were very opposed to police presence, and thought that, you know, north or south of the border, you're wearing that uniform, you're representing the same entity. Wow. And this is just a horrible, horrible issue that occurred. So for those reasons, we were public order, and we had to deal with what we had to deal with. So a bit of an offshoot is the verbiage that you are trained to see. And I would invite any of your business owners to ensure that you have a part of your training curriculum on effective communications and de-escalation skills, but put it together with role playing. See, anybody will ask you, or anybody can ask you, well, what would you say within these circumstances? Put it into play, put it into a scenario, and watch the scenario. We did things here at the Sentinel office that you might be interested in. We put people to the test. And what we did, sir, we videotaped you. And at the end of the scenario, without you seeing the videotape, I asked you to write up your report or your notes. And then after a quick coffee, just to raise your caffeine levels, we sat through like a mock trial.
Okay.
Where you're going to be cross-examined on what you did or didn't do. And it's interesting how the deficiencies, it's like a movie and the script don't quite line up.
Yeah.
And we asked them that. And we put good people in training, Byron, they lost their mojo. They got angry. One young man was, I won't mention his name, Ben. One young man was put to the test where I was saying, well, you said you didn't strike. Let's just look at the video. So, whoa, you did strike the subject during your arrest. So you were lying then, or you're lying. What are you telling the truth? Are you telling the truth now? But you weren't.
No, and it just unravels his whole, and he just couldn't play ball.
And he got angry at me.
Yeah.
And I had to back off, create some distance. I was surrounded by a lot of security professionals, so I felt reasonably safe.
Yeah, let's play some games. Yeah.
But yeah, I said to him later in a private moment, I said, if I can create adversity and anger in a training concept, my friend, what do you do when it's real?
Yeah.
He looked at me and he touched my arm and said, point taken. Point taken.
Yeah. You're getting
and how we need to gather our thoughts and how we need to collect our thoughts. Because you know that written document that you put forward?
Oh, yeah.
Who can view it? Who can read that? Who's going to have access to your written documents? And north and south of the border, you have freedom of information requests. And when you dismiss and you do not include detail and you do not include the reasonable actions and measures that you considered prior to going hands-on, that could become the worst decision you likely have ever made. I usually find people with respect to our industry, sir, are very poor communicators on paper. They don't document things well. And that can become a real hindrance to trying to successfully defend your actions. And I'm going to put that onto the supervisors and the business owners. Pick on Byron for a second. When one of your agents have an action and something is enforced, you view the documentation. Does that meet your satisfaction? If you read through a document and you have to answer questions, you need to make certain that's a fulsome report. Wow. And the context associated to it. And it should meet some form of model. One model I'm familiar with in the States is the PPCT model. I don't know if you're familiar with that. There's a number of use of force models and reference points. And PPCT is a very popular training program in the United States. It's gone worldwide, actually. Wow. But they have like a use of force continuum model. You need to speak to the steps. You need to look at a situational analysis and how you break down your thoughts should be transferred to paper. And that is one thing we really shoot ourselves in the foot, huge, and wonder why we stumble, because the written product is the basis of your success.
The written product is the basis of your success. This is big, because obviously I was going to ask you, so what can professionals do to protect themselves? What types of things are really kind of foundational for navigating these types of incidents? And you're saying the written product is one of the bedrocks of actually protecting yourself under coming scrutiny.
Absolutely. And if you do think about the document you write today, if you're like me, I forget what I did 15 minutes ago.
Right.
And as time goes by, and you work regularly, you're a busy man. I know that, Byron.
Absolutely.
You're out there all the time. And I'm going to suggest, with all due respect, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years from now, the likeliness of you being able to accurately recall and memory recall precisely what you did or what you didn't do is going to start to fail. Memory fails. Mm-hmm. And the closest opportunity you have to best recall is immediately after it occurred, unless there's a stressful situation, unless you're exposed to PTSD environment where you could be shut down. That's another story.
Right.
The issues is that written document is going to allow you to refresh your memory. And it's a basis of scrutiny. It's a basis of cross-examination. And when you deviate from your testimony based on your initial occurrence or your reports or your notes, you're going to be asked by sage counsel, by a trained attorney, is to show the discrepancies of your testimony. So they're going to say to you, so you thought that was important, you said it was important, yet you didn't include it in your original notes. Can you explain why? I would suggest, sir, that you were trying to prevent the truth. You didn't really want to show that you led my client down the path of, harm. You had an agenda. You're a Marine. It's a moment where for you didn't really care. You showed no empathy. And my client was a victim of your agenda. But see, where a report can stymie it right from the get-go. I deal with a lot of litigation counsel in Canada.
Wow.
And I should probably say this. I'm going to say this anyway. I've had a lot of coffees. I'm not accountable for what I say. But the issue is that a lot of times the decision to litigate you is based on written documentation that's been assessed before a law firm is willing to take the file.
Wow. So they've got you in their crosshairs before you even find yourself sitting there. What
terrifies litigation counsel is knowledge. And it's appliable knowledge, the skill sets.
Wow.
So your documentation should include a use of force policy or procedure that your companies should have.
Right.
Make certain that I was, according to my training and my policy procedure, I applied what was expected of me. I took reasonable steps. Even at the Ontario Police College, do you know what we teach a police officer to say before I play my hands? When circumstances permit, you will hear an officer say, is there anything I can say or do that will cause me not to have to use force on you? Please?
Yeah.
What can I do to resolve this? Is not anything I can say to you, Mr. Rodgers, that would we can resolve this issue? I don't wish to apply force on you. See, that's extremely relevant and useful verbiage, because it shows that it's not a question of me applying force. You chose that option, not me.
Right.
That's a difficult premise to defend.
And I'm giving you an opportunity to opt out of, to get off this trajectory with me, Well, okay, give me a candy bar and I'll listen. Okay, well, let's get this man a candy bar. Let's get him a candy,
You got it. And when we ask our people, we used to hire them, like our operatives working for us. Are we making certain we're hiring the right operative? Mm-hmm. And I would invite not criticizing, I would just invite before I hire a man or woman to work with us and work shoulder to shoulder with them, I invite them, I go through what's called a behavioral event interview, BEI. Okay. So I'd say to you, so Mr. Rodgers, tell me, don't respond, but I'd say, Mr. Rodgers, tell me about a time in your life when you've displayed integrity. Would you tell me a time in your life, please, when you've shown compassion? What was the last argument you had in your life, and how was it resolved? Tell me about the last time you were angry.
These are good questions. Yeah.
And then I nail you with the following. Oh, by the way, in those examples you just told, I need a reference point because I have to confirm what you're telling me is accurate.
A reference point, like someone to call and confirm.
Yeah. So you're just not making it up, and you're not lying, and you're not spinning tails.
So good.
I'm not looking to hire Stephen King, who is an author writing horror stories. I'm looking at a person, a human being that can show the ability to exercise judgment in adversarial moments.
Right.
So, Constantino was just talking with us here prior to getting going this morning, is the fact is that the virtues of a person takes the virtues of a warrior. And we need to understand, what is it you're fighting for?
Yeah.
What is important to you? What is relevant to you? And when we lock away those thought-making processes, you're getting into that paradigm of reasonable people making reasonable decisions. I'm not necessarily hiring the toughest person or the most fit person, the most trained person. I'm looking to hire the most ethical, moral, and person that can display reasonable thinking in moments of heat and
under pressure. Yeah, because I 100%. And I agree with you, man. And I always say, I can teach you tactics, but I don't want to be anywhere near you when you're learning character, high quality character. It's what's guiding you through the belly of the beast. That's what's really going to have everything to do with how we come out, or if we come out the other side, or how we end up, and when that heat gets turned up is when you see what that person's guiding values really, really actually truly are,
Absolutely. And, as human beings, we usually learn and practice things in moments of comfort. You think when we sit in a classroom, usually it's a comfortable environment. You're seated, usually at an area, an ambiance. It's nice. You might have nice lighting. All that stuff.
Everything's there for your comfort. Everything.
And, I'm in my 60s. And, obviously what I could do compared to a man or woman in their 20s is different. I'm going to steal the words of a very famous actor, Clint Eastwood, in a movie called Magnum Force, where Clint Eastwood in the movie said, every good man must realize their limitations. So my best fighting days, I'm fit, but my best fighting days are behind me. So I'd rather talk to you. You're a beast, Byron. I don't want to fight you. I want to talk to you. We still have a disagreement, but it doesn't need to get hands on, So a respectful moment. But the point being is, when we take people through physical skills, do you as a facilitator need to take them through an uncomfortable process to do that and learn that? What I'm talking about, your heart rate needs to be up.
Yep.
Your blood pressure needs to be up. And that is the time you need to apply the technique and the tactic when you're tired and you're physically spent, because that's a reality where our good people need to apply these skills. And that's when you start to assess people's abilities or not. And it's been my experience, sir, for decades doing this. I'm an old guy, but it's been my experience that when people get tired, you have a tendency, unless you've got the training to fall back on, you have a tendency to overreact. And you get a little desperate. So you start to do things that could be of that threshold of criminality. It's not. It's just a desperate moment for a desperate time.
Right. Yeah. And this is when good people make mistakes. And you're watching something and even they're sitting there going, I can't believe I did that, and I think it's a good place to be. That's why we need to inoculate ourselves, at that level to these stresses, and I think that, and then is with regards to training on what you said, I think one of the hugest downfalls, and I was talking with one of the guys about this the other day, is that modern training, everything, it was Craig Douglas on one of our other episodes. He's like, everything in your training environment is there for your comfort. You got your knee pads, you got your this, you got your that, air conditioned, had your coffee, you know what's coming. We practice and we train so that our baseline of proficiency is increased. This is why we're getting these reps in and we're training in different environments. And why at the Protect Your Symposium 4.0 that's coming up, you guys, we're going to go on it. Yeah, no. Exciting. And we're going to have you guys down there. Are you coming down as well, right, Steve?
Yes, definitely.
Awesome. Okay.
A lot of fun.
Outstanding. So you guys will have, you'll be there. People can shake your hands. I'm sure this episode's going to be very much appreciated.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
There's so much amazing information here. If you guys want to hear more about this, keep an eye out for our master's class that's coming out with the school, the League of Executive Protection Specialists. We're coming up with a second level. So we have training day, now the master's class, and Mr. Summerville gives us a whole period of instruction in there. But also keep an eye out, Steve's details for his website and what he does will be in the list in the show notes below as well. So you guys can follow him. And then EPL Canada, I'm sure you guys will be seeing some more things come down range with that. But so what would you say is the hardest lesson you've seen, during your time professionally in the field with regards to these things?
Great question. I think there's the pain associated to how the pendulum has changed in public opinion on law enforcement, and people wearing a badge and attempting to provide a service to the community that's now perhaps being misunderstood and misrepresented. I joined policing in 1978. And at that time, I can honestly say, sir, there was a healthy rapport and a healthy relationship with the community, and people wanted to talk and they respected your uniform. I've seen this change. So I think we need to, as a whole in our industry, create an information base, change, a paradigm change, become more conversant with people, really get down to what we're trying to do, communicate with people. I would really like to see that how law enforcement is revered to be returned. So this has really broke my heart over the last decade.
Yeah.
Is just how good people will be tarnished and they look to be as the bad guys or bad girls. And that's, in my humble opinion, that's not fair.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's same here, man. There's good and bad in every bunch. But
absolutely.
Anytime you do a broad brushstroke and all of somebody's bad, you're wrong. Your judgment is wrong. It doesn't matter, what color, race, creed, religion they are. You're just, nope, that doesn't work that way. That's
in the greater Toronto area, where I live just in the outskirts of Toronto, United Nations, UN, has said that the greater Toronto area is the most diverse community in the world. We speak over 200 different languages, 200 different cultures. And that's insane. I'm always amazed. I ask people in my classrooms, my program, so many people speak more than one language. I see people putting their hands up 2, 3, 4. I barely speak one language, and I'm in awe of people that are able to communicate. My kids speak too; they're bilingual.
Wow!
And the opportunity to reach out, communicate with people. But I use that as an avenue to learn, because when you're upset, when you're afraid, when you're vulnerable, generally speaking, people revert to their natural tongue, whatever language you feel comfortable in. And can you begin to appreciate for a moment when you're in challenge, feel that you're being threatened or afraid, and you can't communicate, can't be understood, how that raises the bar of adversity and challenge. So be very, very mindful in a multicultural society where in Greater Toronto area, English is not even the top 10 language spoken anymore.
Wow.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't recognize that. It's a bit of a melting pot in that sense, and so many different cultures. And I learned years ago, culturally at times, and I've never deliberately tried to hurt anyone or make anyone feel bad. And, it's interesting. You walk in different cultures' homes, and you can do things unknowingly to be insulting.
Right.
And I remember years ago, a gentleman, I'm very shake hands, pre-COVID, right? Hello, how are you? Shake hands. And if you're there with your partner, I'd shake their hands. Hello, welcome. My name is Steve Summerville. And I'd welcome you. And once I did that, and the gentleman stopped me. He said, why have you just insulted my family? I said, what do you mean? He says, well, you shook my hand's wife. I did.
The wife's hand, yeah.
He says, We're Orthodox Jews. Why would you be touching my wife? And I said, I did not know that. He said, well, you should. You're a police officer. And I went, you're right. Yeah, I said, I don't know what to say to you, sir, other than I am sorry. I did not know. I know. And he says, it's accepted. Let's move on.
Well done.
Oh,
that's,
and I thought,
good job, man. Well done.
And when you think culture, things that we can do to be inappropriate, there's some cultures that like touching and don't. And, you step into an elevator and you see people, pre-COVID, how people respond to closeness and proximity.
Right.
And that's the other thing I like to train is proxemics. What happens when you close the distance between you and another human being? Mm-hmm. Especially look at you suspiciously, you're fearful, and you got a uniform. You got some pretty hardcore tack looking guys, and that can be scary.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, this is not a Disney movie that we're dealing with here. And people can feel a little unnerved. So you need to understand how your appearance can be unsettling to some cultures more so than others.
Oh yeah, 100%. And just to humans, and being able to navigate that, it's, I mean, even for me moving around the world, it's something that I'm hyper aware of is how my appearance can impact people. The reality is everyone's safer if I'm there, period. I'm the guy that's going to die to protect all of you if someone walks in here with a gun, right? I'm that guy. But, we're dealing with all of their experiences and their perceptions and their, what show they watched last night that's on the top of their brain. So, just to get on a little rabbit hole, I'm constantly managing that and showing myself friendly in environments, showing myself to be a gentleman in environments. I know I'm a 245 black guy with tattoos. Yeah, you know what I mean? But I'm constantly smiling and I'm gaining kind of a moral high ground and kind of showing that positive character, making eye contact, saying hello. These are kind of the social dynamics that go along with creating a safer environment for yourself if you have to do something. But also I think of a good protector, because you want to help people be here, showing respect, these things are huge ways to create a safer environment.
Especially people that don't respect you.
Oh yeah, and those are the good ones, because we're changing things, man. And
That's right.
I really believe, and I said this on one of the earlier podcasts, but I'll say it again. I had a road rage incident that almost happened the other day, and I'm driving and I cut some guy off. Maybe I don't even remember. He rolls up next to me in his truck and he's cussing at me and he's getting aggressive and he's like kind of trying to run me off the road. And of course I'm sitting here, I'm me, like I shoot 800 rounds a month. Like, I mean, like I'm training for things all the time.
Right.
I just did a driving package last week and then did a shooting package. And here we are, and I'm looking at this guy and I'm like, hey man, I'm sorry, and I'm just like, I shouldn't have cut you off. I'm sorry. I apologize. Let's just try to have a good day, and I just looked at him like, hey man, you got me. I'm sorry. And it took this, and he just, you see him going, and he's like, I'm like, let's just enjoy. Yeah. I'm like, let's just enjoy the day, man.
I was good for a fight and you took that out of me.
Yeah. I'm like, just have a good one, bro. And he's just like, okay, all right. I'm like, boom. And so we have a great day, and no one had to die and no one had to fight. No one had to get sued. No one had, no one just had to go and tell a story about getting beat up on the side of the road, boom. And to me, it's like, this is the art form, this is the Jedi mind trick of, I'm going to take out the motivation of this possibly lethal encounter. If you have a gun on you, every physical altercation is possibly a lethal altercation. You don't know what's going to happen. There's so much chance, but yeah, man, that is one of the things I think a lot of people talk about, how like ego, this and that. I kind of look at it more like, I look at myself as a master of defusing things. And it's actually something that's been with me since I was young, where I'm a master at stopping the fight. Now, if we have to fight, then this is the other side of the coin. But I really like taking pride in, being able to extinguish those flames, without even having.
You're a firefighter.
Yeah. I think it's awesome. And then we enjoy the night,
And one of the issues, it's just not a fire that hurts people, kills people, it's smoke damage.
Yeah.
So we got to be prepared of that heat to put those fires out. And people generally love firefighters. They take no exception to a firefighter showing up in your neighborhood. And it's just that approach. They revere firefighters. And I think we got to look at that ability to put fires out, even if it's harsh at times.
Yeah.
And just that ability for you to be able to recognize that's why you have so many followers. I call you a humble warrior with respect. You are.
Thank you, sir.
That's what you are. And, you've got a powerful smile that really de-escalates a lot of things. And it's not a put on smile. It's not a forced smile.
Thank you.
And that ability to smile lightens up a lot of circumstances in and around us. Absolutely. And, years ago, I was criticized. Steve, you got to learn to smile. And I'm thinking, I am. And I was told also by earlier mentors in my career that you really need to lighten up. You got a strong personality, and whoa, it's like a 3D movie. And we're not wearing the glasses here, and you really got to pull this back a bit. So I took that, and I'm still a work in project, but recognizing that you really do get a lot further with the desire to communicate and emphasize, hey, come on, let's resolve this. And if that becomes integral to your training, your policies, procedures, and the way we deploy, we all go home tonight to the people we care about. Clients are happy. They call you back. That's a good win-win. And nowadays, and the media exposure that we get just edifies the heck out of you as to what you do and how you do it. And even advocates. I don't know if you ever dealt with activism and activists at shows and conferences. For 10 years, I was security head for the International AIDS Conference. We went all over the world, including Washington, D.C.
Wow.
We went to Australia. We went to Europe. That's Mexico City.
That's
Mexico.
a heavy topic. So I'm sure you guys got
all the people who were actually living with HIV and fighting for pharmaceutical companies. We were, and first time in Toronto in 2006, we were able to, this is the first event globally that never had violence, because we're really, really primed security to negotiate and to work with people. And, all the delegates, a lot of them were activists. And have you ever met with a person? It's hard to get people motivated when you pay them a salary. Imagine doing it for nothing, putting yourself out there, even to being exposed to arrest and scrutiny. Wow. And, what we were able to create through dialogue is the desire to interact, to go to the next action or the next, demonstration, and not be injured, not be in custody, and to have a really, really meaningful, fruitful presentation. And that's the secret. Talking to people, not fighting people. And activists are not anarchists. There's a whole difference. That's a different topic for debate.
Huge difference.
But we are dealing with a lot of people who have activism mindsets watching what we do. And when we look at that, we can manage those responses by how we approach them.
Absolutely. That's intelligence. That's wisdom.
Definitely. But I do like your style, and whether you know it or not, you play the smile. It's genuine. It's genuine. And that really disarms a lot of people. So a man might see your opposing size.
Right.
They're not seeing your fist, they're seeing your smile. You see a man's hands lower. Right. And when I see that happening, I know I'm winning. And I'm going home.
And this is another huge rabbit trail, but I at least got to mention it. You touched it. Being genuine and being able to genuinely access this compassion or desire to connect and understand or meet someone's need. This is really like the secret sauce. Like, this is the magic of the interaction. You've got to be genuine. If you're not genuine, if you're too technical, it will have the exact opposite effect. And you will have just almost made it worse if you're just too technical trying to say the right thing. And it's like a clanging gong, like a cymbal, if you're just sitting there and there's no empathy and there's no genuine energy behind what you do. I guess you just have to care about humans on a deep level. But you when you said that last piece, I was like, wow, that does mean a lot. Thank you so much for everything you said, because that's made the difference.
Appreciate that.
Outstanding. All right, so that was amazing. We've gone through so much. In closing, I'd say, what is it all for? How would you like to be remembered, Mr. Summerville?
Wow, thank you. Self-serving thoughts aside, I'd like to be known for making a difference in this industry, to say that the right blend of training, physical skills training, and the right blend of verbal skills is the secret sauce to the success in this industry. And by taking the opportunity and recognizing the need to talk to people is just as relevant as what to do when you're facing violence. And I think we can really make a marked improvement in this industry. Cross that to the other side to try to put yourself in their shoes. That's the definition of empathy. Put yourself in their shoes. And we're doing that. We're getting a very, very balanced operative, and we're creating a network of professionals, like-minded professionals that are not thugs, not criminals. They are like-minded individuals who are out there to make a difference, one day and one handshake at a time.
Outstanding. That's huge. All right. Well, man, it's an honor to have these conversations. We got to do this again. There's so much stuff that we've spoken about. It's an honor. I'm looking forward to everything that you guys bring to the table with EPL Canada. Looking forward to shaking your hand and seeing,
we're going to see you in Miami.
Yeah, Constantine and Mike, you guys be in
Canada's
Miami.
Canada's coming.
Yeah, to the Protector Symposium.
Maple syrup and the red flag. That's right.
Yeah, I love maple syrup, so I'm looking forward to that.
We'll keep that in mind.
Protector Symposium 4.0. Hopefully more of you will join us and train with us. We're going to be talking about transitional spaces, how to survive around your vehicle as you're moving. We're going to be talking about integrated combatives. We're going to have Lieutenant Colonel Grossman there talking about the bulletproof mindset, Craig Douglas, Mike Pannone, Jared Wahungi, Tony Santmanot, all in one place. I'll be your host. So join us for that. And once again, Thank you, Steve Summerville. It's been an honor.
Thank you, sir. Stay safe.
All right, take care.
Cheers.
Yo, if you're a private security professional wanting to take your game to the next level, go to executiveprotectiontrainingday.com to check out my personal success package for private security professionals. Check it out, executiveprotectiontrainingday.com. And remember, y'all, hard skills do save lives, but soft skills get you paid. Boom. Boom. And to support this podcast, go to executiveprotectionlifestyle.com and contribute to our Patreon account. That Patreon account is what helps me make this podcast possible, contributing to this brand, what we're doing here, making it so that I can bring better guests on, making it so that we can plan more events and just expand the contribution to the private security industry and also to making America a safer place. Do whatever you can, contribute whatever you can, because it makes all of these things possible. Thanks for those contributions. Yo, and before we go, I got to shout out to the sponsors, starting out with Primary Weapon Systems, PWS. They truly are the evolution of the rifle. Use Byron for 10% off. Grayman & Company, the most comfortable tactical suits in the game. Use Byron for 10% off with them. Until the next podcast, this is Byron Rodgers, protector by nature and by trade. Out. Boom.